All right, so the predominant conversation for this one is going to be about education and wireless. We have a few different speakers here with multiple different kind of topics. The first one was World Digital School, but then David Sandel actually had to take off and had some other emergency. So we're actually going to have a demonstration by Urban Leap. And Urban Leap is a pilot project management platform. We're very excited about using it because it really brings structure to the work that we're doing around demonstration projects in general, and really see, how we can kind of put some legs to some of the action clusters in the work we're doing around GCTC. So I'm going to have Eris here do a demonstration, but I want to give some context first of why he's presenting. So for the education supercluster, the forming supercluster, we want to be able to really go towards demonstration projects and pilot projects in general to be the format of how we actually mobilize the work we do. So basically, how can we convert action clusters into actionable clusters, like actually make things happen? And so pilot projects seem to be the way to go. So, and then Urban Leap popped out of nowhere about probably like 8 months ago, I think I met you. And Deborah Acosta, the Chief Innovation Officer for the City of San Leandro, put us in touch. And I don't know how they got in touch, but we were kind of helping with the development of the platform and giving feedback to them as they were developing out the app. The web-based app. So I've kind of seen it now, not from complete scratch, but I've seen it to some extent when it was kind of nascent still. And now it's actually a launch platform and has customers and is usable, and we're using it. And so I'm very excited to see that thing grow. So that's the context of it. I'll let Eris take it from here. You want to come up here and actually play with it? Great. I'll give you about like 8 minutes.
Sure. Just give kind of a brief overview. It's funny you mentioned Deborah. So Deborah was one of the first, when we started, we just reached out to anybody we could. She was back then the Chief Innovation Officer of San Leandro. And we had this idea, like many other ideas, and we sent it to her, and she responded with so much excitement. Oh, we don't know how to manage our proposals and vendors and pilots, and our process is kind of messy when we do it a lot. And just from her excitement, this is why we focused initially on this idea, and then from there, things kind of went pretty well from there. And now we're at the point that we have kind of the initial product and working with a few cities. Yes, I just want to give kind of a, I only have a few minutes. This is pretty impromptu, so not super prepared, but kind of show the overview of what the concept is. What are the different features and functionalities. It's pretty simple, so I hope I can cover most of it in a few minutes. Yeah, so this is how the Urban Leap dashboard looks like. This is what any person in any city staff could see. So you can come in and kind of see all the ongoing pilots. We're still looking for the right term because some call it pilot programs, public prototyping, urban experiments. The whole idea is to iterate, test, and kind of figure out what works and what not. So this is the view of all the active pilots in the city. This is an example. We did a demo with LA, so I'll show you this one. Oops. Sorry about that. Haven't used a non-Mac for a while, so. Yeah, so I'll give kind of an overview of the stages the pilot goes through, and then I go into an individual pilot, show you a little bit of the functionality in there. So pilots starts as kind of prospective projects. So this is a view where you can manage, again, in one place, all the invitations to different vendors, vendor proposals. One thing we discovered along the way, there's also a lot of internal pilots. So not necessarily vendors, things like internal processes or things that the city is testing or trying out. There's actually usually more of those than pilots with vendors. But here you can see all the potential pilots. Once the vetting process is done, which I'll show you how that works, pilots go into the active stage and then essentially move from planning to contracting, tracking, where all the data is gathered, and then final evaluation. When a pilot is completed, it would go into this kind of completed library. Again, you can always search and go back to historical data and see for vendors or pilots or technologies that were already tested. One thing that we're really excited to do once we have enough cities is to allow you to do this kind of search across different cities and learn from others as well, not only within one jurisdiction. And a view of shelf pilots if you can't do everything all the time. So at the time you want to shelve a pilot for later, not go through it and maybe revive it in the future. So that's kind of the overview of the different pieces. There's a little bit more there that I wouldn't go into just for the sake of time. But I will go through the stages of each pilot and the kind of pilot life cycle and what that looks like. So if I go into a specific proposal, so this is actually an interesting, I hope you can see somewhat what's written there, interesting pilot startup of Israel, happens to be, called Zen City. They analyze social media. So here in one place, once the proposal come to the platform, the right person is notified, and you can kind of review. You can add additional reviewers again to review this potential opportunity. In this case, they attach a one-pager that you can take a look at. Really interesting startup. Some things around kind of the general pilot structure, so a few things we think are important. One pretty simple feature is pilot timeline, where you can see where you are and what needs to happen next. Once you enter pilot details, which you'll see in a minute, this would kind of expand with more details. The pilot team, so I find this to be simple but important. So you can assign a pilot manager, so this is the person who would be notified about all the milestones and what's happening and would really kind of see the process through. Out of time, just the fact that there's no clear pilot manager makes this type of projects fail. City team, so these are just kind of the internal stakeholders, but also there's an option to include the vendor. And when you're really piloting a new technology or trying to innovate, I personally believe it's really important to include the innovator in the table and use their help to plan the pilot. What kind of metrics do we need to set? What kind of data do we need to measure? And also vendors are very hungry, so they would do a lot of the work to make this successful. So I think we encourage everybody to include the vendors. Of course, discussion and pilot settings, which is currently just name and department. So this is how the first stage of pilot. So this is not a live pilot yet. Once it's approved, it will move to planning, and that's where things start to get more interesting. So it would go from this prospective phase, or prospective view, to active. And of course, I won't go into the details of notification, but all the stakeholders will be notified, and then kind of the pilot goes into the planning stage. And here the idea is essentially to agree on the kind of core pieces of a pilot. So of course describe it, but really important is setting up goals up front that everybody can see in one place and are aware of and agree on. Same with risks. Metrics are super important. I'll show you a complete example later, but what we make sure people do here, and we believe is a good practice, is to define the metric, but also the goals. So if you're trying to save, what are you aiming for? 20% or 50% or more than that or less? And really having a goal. So you have an idea at the end of the day, was this successful or not? And this is where the collaboration comes into place, because different opinions can come into the table. And then a few kind of simpler product management issues, such as budget, milestone, documents, and so on. Once this is completed, so this is how it would look once it's filled out, or mostly filled out. We're going into the contracting stage. So here we don't provide too much, but we believe it's useful. So one option is to upload your own contract, again, just to have all the records in one place. And you can have different versions, of course. But the other one, like in this case, is you can request a pilot contract from us, and then we take the pilot details, put them into a contract template that we've gathered from different cities who've run pilots before and know how it should look like. And this is surprisingly sometimes takes so many months because legal teams still don't know how to work with this concept of a pilot, how the contract should look like, but it can really be lightweight, and we try to help with that. So in this case, we would generate a contract, or at least an advanced draft for you. We don't have much time, but feel free to stop me if you have any questions or suggestions. And then tracking is when, so the pilot is now live. Again, everybody has been notified, and this is I think where the kind of the real action happens. So we give the pilot manager and the vendor the ability to track the metrics, track the milestones, and more importantly, track the different metrics. So again, in one place you can see if you're above target or below. You see what metrics you set up, and you can kind of track it all, and in real time see if you're on track or not, or where we are. If I'll go to maybe a different example. Once the pilot is completed, so again, you can always go back and review the data and change whatever is needed. But this is where this all comes together during the evaluation phase, where you can really see the pilot manager and the same team can see a summary of the goals. So what happened with the goals? So this is marked by the pilot manager when he looks at this. The milestones and the individual metrics. You can go back to the data and kind of review it again, and then make a final evaluation. In this case, I'm not the pilot manager, but this one I think I am. Yeah. And then make a final evaluation. Again, what's going to happen next? Do we need to do another pilot? Do we need to extend this pilot? Can we move forward with an RFP? Is this too risky and doesn't make sense? But really make this decision. All the work came together to make this decision based on all the data that is here. And again, once this is done, the pilot would move into the completed stage. You can always go back and see what happened. There's quite a few features that I like and want to show. Derek mentioned one that I should show, and this is the ability to, at any stage of the pilot, whether it's proposal or evaluation or data tracking, you can generate a simple report that you can just hand off to people to, again, communicate better what has happened or what we were doing. It looks something like this. Again, depends on the type of the pilot and the stage of the pilot. And again, this is something you create with a click of a button and give you kind of the, let's say, executive level overview of where we are with this, in this case, completed pilot. And again, all the data is there, including the initial proposal. Should be down there somewhere. And yes, we're working with a few cities already. We do see a lot of value in the fact that this is kind of very centralized and collaborative. But what we really believe is that having enough cities on such a platform, really, again, giving a very seamless way to share learnings and find how different cities are solving challenges. This is essentially what the GCTC is about. And we believe that a platform can help share learnings and kind of help spread good ideas quickly, and stop bad ideas from spreading. And that's where we're kind of aiming to be once we have a few more cities on the platform. Yeah, that's kind of the overview.
All right, let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
Maybe like one or two questions for yours here? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a quick, what do you charge people for it?
Good question. We're still figuring it out. So we learned that cities understand the value of this and are willing to pay for this. And right now our focus is, we believe we can help vendors and make those connections, but we really focus on reducing friction within the city and kind of drive better results. So the cities we're working with and the government agencies are paying for it. Not a huge sum of money, and right now, again, we're still in the early days, so we want to work with the right cities and develop this more. But they're paying, in the thousands of dollars per month. So that's currently the model. I think it will change once we have, again, enough cities, and when we have enough cities, I think vendors will be much more, we can provide more value to vendors. But yeah, currently we're just charging the city a subscription.
That's a subscription.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like put on a credit card.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Usually below the RFP, we don't
Yeah,
want
exactly.
we don't want to deal with that at our stage.
Stephanie's someone you should probably talk to because she works with Oakland City of Oakland.
Yeah.
Oh, so, okay.
Oh, yeah, a lot of cities. Yeah, listen, we should talk.
Sure,
So
sure.
I'm trying to get the price.
Oh, all right, sure.
Shannon?
So with the tracking of milestones, maybe you mentioned this, do you send out like email notifications to project members or is this a platform where you kind of go in and kind of check the status of things? Does it push out
Yes,
notifications?
yes. So we learn almost any action that you take, the team members will be notified. Again, in different ways. So you have in-app notifications like these ones. Yeah, I think I actually have a few new ones from Hayward. But also, if you haven't checked those, within a day or two, depends on how you define it. You get a notification. Hey, you have 7 updates. In different pilots. We learned that this is one of the problems with pilot projects. It's rarely that the main job of someone in the city, is to manage pilots. So then it's kind of being forgotten. And then 2 months later, hey, we missed all the milestones. And so we actually see a lot of value in sending a notification. People come back, click a couple of buttons, and it really just keeps things moving. So yeah, we do that. Yeah. Okay, you said 2 questions, so I guess we're done.
Yep. Move on to the next
Okay.
one. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Is it this the new one, right? This one? So Shiva is responsible. So Shiva and Farid is the ones presenting. It's going to be the Advanced Flood Warning Environmental Awareness System for the city of Roanoke Park. Farid, Chair of Department of Engineering Science at Sonoma State University, and Shiva Kumar Mathapathy, co-founder of CTO of Do Mobility. Shiva's actually the one that told me about GCTC, so he's responsible for everything that I'm doing. So he is the guy. So thank you for that, and not thank you, same time. So Shiva, go for it, and Farid. This works.
There you go.
You just have 10 minutes, okay?
Sure. 10 minutes. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I should also add that Shiva told me about all these things, so the reason I'm here is because of him. I just go first just to kind of bring some introduction material, and then after that, he's going to continue. Basically, being in the education supercluster, we just wanted to give you a little of our experience as to how we think we can potentially approach the city and how we can kind of introduce some of the IoT technologies and to the city, and what's the right approach? Like, how do you actually bring together all these stakeholders, including the enterprises, educational institutions like universities and colleges, as well as the city, the people who are actually in the city and then make the decisions. So this presentation is mostly just to kind of give you our vision of how our experience with the city has been and what has worked and what hasn't, and what we think we can potentially take it as the next step. So our vision in terms of approaching the city, we think, and a smart city in general, we think as several speakers in the morning very well define the way the concept of smart city is. We think a smart city is really should be, the goal of the smart city should be improving the quality of humans, right, people. It should be basically technology which emphasizes on improving the quality of life more than anything else. To that end, the goal of this smart city should really be sustainability. That's basically sustainability, so creating a sustainable economy and environmental sustainability, which really sustainability is nothing more than getting feedback from the society, from all the resources and how the resources are being used. And based on that, we try to provide community education and kind of create some kind of information management system that we basically tell the community how the resources are being used and how they can potentially change the behavior in such ways that the community as a whole can benefit. And therefore, to eventually we make much more informed decisions. So that's a kind of a sort of a roadmap that we think the smart city should really follow. And therefore, if you really think about all these things, so obviously the concept of the smart city is more than just bringing this smart technology and smart sensors and just putting all these sensors but in different places. Rather, it really needs to bring these three entities, the smart government and municipalities, smart technologies, and smart consumers. So it really needs to create a synergy between these three stakeholders. To that end, we think, for example, the smart citizens, potentially this concept of promoting the smart city and sustainability should really create this activism in consumers and in the community, within the community. So it can actually bring the community together, get them participate in the concept. So when, for example, we decide to put these cameras in the street, you know, people don't think that, well, what are you going to do with this camera? Are you tracking people? What's the what is the purpose? And we have found out, based on the experience that we have had, that if it's only between the city and enterprises, it becomes very suspicious. A lot of these, especially when it comes to security and potentially invading the privacy of the public, the whole concept becomes kind of a suspicious concept from many communities. So to that end, it makes a lot more sense if you bring these neutral components there, which in this case, we believe that is really colleges and universities, because they really don't have anything to gain, and basically their main idea is to provide education. So if you bring this concept of educational institution and help, so through the educational institution, you create a sort of a platform that you bring the enterprises as well as the community and municipalities together and create a common platform that they can communicate with each other, show their technologies, and show the potential test cases. That can be a very successful model. Therefore, really, we see the colleges and institutional education and universities in general is really a facilitator more than anything else that can really create an atmosphere to promote the IoT and smart city technologies. And to that end, we have been thinking about creating perhaps a curriculum, some workshops for city members, or some small platforms that may be like 4-hour workshop, maybe 1-day workshop, that we can kind of bring some of these technologies. So we become a way, and through that, we connect cities together, we connect technologies and city and municipalities together. And I think at this point, the basic idea of these workshops, which is a part of the education aspect of the smart city, would really be reaching out to stakeholders, kind of show them what are the best practices. So not every city needs to recreate the whole IoT technology search for things. Just tell them like what has worked in other cities. Just kind of relay some of the existing experiences. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Shiva, and Shiva is going to talk about some of the curriculums that we have been developing for cities and how some of these workshops can be beneficial.
Yeah, thank you, Farid. I think this is the derivative of last time few of you met in the Washington, D.C., that we thought that there is some kind of discussions needed on the smart city. So how we created this syllabus is actually we have, reduced down from the semester or a quarter syllabus what we have been teaching, So basically, we'll have 5 sessions in that. Session 1 will have an overview of a smart city and block diagram, building the block, what are the components involved in that. So it's basically give them a little bit of a background on that. And in the session 2, it's more on a technical. We just deep down in the technical, more on the hardware, operating systems, what networking technologies are there. Some people may be interested. Some IT people may want to know these, ingredients. Then we would like to include that into that. And then session 3 is about the cloud and analytics. Basically, when you see any smart city, we have 4 components, right? One is a sensor, which is actually accessing the your inputs, and then you have the microcontroller unit where it is processing it, and then the networking, and the 4th one is the cloud. So we'll just walk them through on the cloud technologies, what the cloud is, and what's the database technology they're using it, analytics, and interfacing the hardware, and what kind of a technology they need to really implement a smart city projects there. So, and then this is one of the important which we added. When we had our earlier curriculum, the cybersecurity and privacy was not there. When GCTC introduced that it is a mandatory that we need to have a cybersecurity, then In fact, I started learning on cybersecurity, blockchain, and some of the aspects. Then we started including those aspects. Now we have a full curriculum on that into the syllabus there on the session 4. So these are about the marketing, business, and then the technology. Then on the session 5, what we'll do is that we will just see how a prototype design, because all this time you see the prototype, right? It could be a Raspberry Pi or your Arduino board. How do you convert them into productions? Many smart city team, they ask me, how do I make this prototype into productions? And then we talk about the PCB design. I know it's a little bit of technical, but I thought it will complete overview for them to bring a prototype to the production. So PCB design, what's the 3D printing, system integration, testing QA, and then what is the final acceptance test as per the standards, because it has to be designed as per the NIST standards or as per the ISO standards. The product has to be designed as per that. Then we talk about the standards. And then after that, we actually recap, and then we brainstorm with all the stakeholders that what is your problem, because each city has got various different problems, right? San Leandro has got certain set of problems. It doesn't mean that same problem in the Ronald Park. And I'm just sharing my experience with them. So we'll sit with them and what are your problems areas, and discuss the next action items. So we don't want to just leave just a theory over there. What are the next action items? We list the actions. And then the feasibility of getting grants. Of course, we also try to connect them to some of the National Science Foundations. By sharing this, in Silicon Valley, what I've seen is a tremendous response and support coming up. People like Samsung, people like ARM, people like IBM, they want to participate in that. They said, okay, we have the technologies, we have something, we can help to the city and the community, and they want to participate in that. And we want to bring them to the board and then share with that to the city officers there. And then connecting possible for corporate, even private investment. Some of the cities may not be having the networking, so we would like to make sure that we invite them as a guest lecturer in the workshop. They will share about what is happening on those, and they also get exposed to that. And then we don't want to leave it there. We want to set a next date. What is the next action item you want to do it? Whether you want to come to a GCTC like this and present your own case, or be part of the action cluster of other city, so that you can learn from other cities. So that's the whole concept. This has been again derived. I have been attending GCTC for last 4 years or 3.5 years. I know what problems are there, because cities, they come out with their own requirement. But I thought as an academic, we should go there and teach them what exactly is their smart city and what are the ingredients, what exactly they should do it. So this we are trying to, is the first effort. We are kicking off now. Our goal is to get at least our own city, Ronald Park. We already talked to the city manager. We want to start with them, and next we want to implement in other cities over there. So this is the curriculum. In fact, we have a poster session. Those of you are interested, we have put everything in a poster session today, tomorrow, and the day after. So you are more than welcome to attend that poster session. And these are our contacts. If anyone is interested, feel free to reach us. We can share these information.
All right.
Thank you.
Maybe 1 or 2 questions. Everyone has one?
Sure.
So you said you're implementing this at Sonoma State. So I guess these partners will come to you at your university. So if you wanted to come to another, more like Oakland or like San Leandro, somewhere up there, where would you want to be in
Yeah, good question. Actually, ideally, we want to go to the city so that it will facilitate to others also to attend. Instead of just 1 or 2, we want to go to the city office, and conduct the training, Say for example, Ronald Park, which is a part of Sonoma State. We would like to go to the city. They can assemble 10 or 15 people, and we want to do that. And similarly for San Leandro City, we would like to go there. But in some cases, they may not be able to come. Yes, Sonoma State, we have a facility, they're more than welcome to do that. Not only that, we also have this, I didn't cover up on this, is that we have it's called a maker space, which is funded by National Science Foundations, If any city want to build a prototypes, they can always come to the maker's space and build a prototype from scratch. Yes, that's available there. Yeah. Yes, please.
It seems that education in the area of smart cities is hot right now. Everybody's trying to start an academy, and I'm just wondering what kind of coordination might be taking place to avoid reinventing the wheel or establishing
Well, I think as far as this effort is concerned, we want to launch it for wherever we have implemented our smart city use cases. Actually, 3 cities. In fact, I am the team lead for that. We want to implement on that. Now, how do we expand it? I think this is the great platform. We want to route it to this platform and extend it down. And apart from that, there are some companies. They also want to go into their own database. So they said that okay, we want to participate. So these are the 3 aspects we would like to go through that. Farid, you want to add anything? Yeah.
I just wanted to add, I'm not personally aware of any educational institution that's just providing resources like this. I mean, there are a lot of educational material, but most of the time they're either selling it or they're actually introducing people to a particular product so they can buy it. In this particular case, we're basically just connecting. We're really facilitating. And we're hoping that through this, we can gain some experience. And as Shiva said, this is the best place to kind of share that information to see what worked and what didn't work, and kind of share our information and experiences with each other.
Is there an expectation that there might be a certification process at the end of that, or?
I think that's really where we're going, and we're hoping that potentially this becomes a certificate program. But as you were mentioning, it needs to work out a couple of things, just to kind of see what makes sense really for that, and what's useful really to the city.
Great, all right.
Thank you.
So we're going to switch it up a little bit. Shiva actually, along with Farid, has about 2 or 3 presentations, and Stephanie Hayden here has 2. And so I'm going to switch it up and actually weave you guys in a little bit, and then I'll push Catherine up a little more. She can't hear me, but I'll push her up a little bit. I'm going to push you up a little bit on the agenda. Okay, and I'll have Shiva and Stephanie, your last 2, kind of more on the end side. So Stephanie, would you like to do the next one? So Stephanie Hayden, CEO and founder of Vision Architecture. I know you started a new organization, which is much, you'll tell more about that later.
In order though, can we do the constituent one first?
Yep, so she had, her action cluster is constituent-led public data and IoT utility for urban health, housing, and environmental hazard management. That's a mouthful, but there's gonna be some interesting content from that, so let's do it. Why don't you help me here identify which one? Yeah, it's this one. This one? Yeah? Cool. All right. All right, so you got 10 minutes, right? Oh, you
Yeah, I'm just gonna fly through it. Hi there. So my name is Stephanie Hayden, and I have a consulting practice that works on smart cities for about the last 20-something years, public sector and private sector. And over time, I realized that I think what we're all realizing too is that no one's designing for the constituents, for like all the people anywhere. So recently, I started volunteering pro bono work to the city of Oakland so I could get more involved and figure out what people want in every community. And so what has come out of that is also realizing that there really aren't software vendors who are building smart city platforms that are built for the constituency. So I started a software company too. So what I'm about to show you is basically Oakland's utilization of smart city planning and strategy and visioning with services built around constituents and what they are all really concerned about, and the technology that we built to host that. So there's some like me slides in there just talking about clients, right? The only reason I'm doing that is just to kind of show you the breadth of private sector and public sector. And so I kind of consider these clients like advisors. You know, whenever we have questions, we can go to them and ask them about their city and about their products that they're selling. So the goal of this constituent public data and IoT utility was to create a blueprint, right, that we can use and share with everybody. That's focusing on Oakland, right? But the goal is extensibility, so you guys just use the same pattern, really apply it to your city. Leverage the community coalitions that already exist, right? Like sometimes there's like community councils, sometimes there's like a hookup with like Oakland Police Department, they have beats, things like that, so there are already people in the network that can be part of your project. And leverage the people, the process, and the technology. What everyone in the Bay Area is worried about right now is housing. Turns out I think that's happening everywhere. I heard everyone talking about it since I've been in Portland, right?
Certain communities always getting pushed out, that kind of thing. So focus on the short term and, focus on the short and long term. And the sustainable outcomes, right? Like in the case of Oakland, there's super old buildings, super old schools, brand new things, right? So how can we make the old new again? And then figure out sustainable solutions for the systems that we do want to keep, even if they're old and legacy. If they're good, then like let's upgrade them but make them sustainable. So the goal of this project is to give you guys, so those are some of the clients, some teams, but we worked on I focused a lot on the public sector over the last probably 10 years, just because I wanted to get at how can we get the services to the people. And so what happened is I just had to make us a nonprofit. So we really focus on people, planet, profit. I don't know if everyone uses that term out here, but the triple bottom line, right? Like don't just think about selling products, but think about sustainability. So there's some future city projects we've worked on. So my background started, the CIO of the city of Oakland reached out to me and said, hey, we've got this federal DOT Smart City Challenge, can you help us? So I jumped in on that, met a bunch of really cool, innovative people at the city, and then they asked me to work on Resilient Oakland, which was Rockefeller Foundation 100 Resilient Cities initiative, and that was how do we reach out to the whole 450,000 people and get them all to go through digital transformation together. So I was pulled in for that project. So we're like kumbaya, right? Like this is great. Here's all the problems in Oakland. We all started triangulating on them and being like, yes, we're going to collaborate and say it's going to be fantastic, right? So they created a civic design lab to have thinkers all come together. And this is actually, I'm happy to say, the top there, the cupola, is our meeting space. I'd love to invite the supercluster to meet up there. So it is an amazing place, but so then we got slammed pretty much as soon as we launched these strategies with these huge housing and environmental issues, right, that are killing people and poisoning people. So the ghost ship fire and lead poisoning. So we said, all right, let's just get in and do something about this. So we took that same crowdsourced approach to say, well, how can we engage with a constituency and start showing live data about what's really happening in every community. So on the left, that's the list of micro-communities in Oakland. So there's 146 actually, and every community has a totally different personality, right? But the behaviors in the communities will generally be the same. There's somebody always talking about business, somebody talking about education, somebody talking about tax, it's the same people, right? But different cultural connections between the people. So we're creating basically live leaderboards that are allowing the constituency to submit their own data. So here's a big change. It's that this is user-owned and contributed data. What is on this platform, we don't own it, right? I'm not selling it to some big vendor or telecom company or anything like that. It's the individuals in the communities that own this data. And they can choose what they want to share and surface. So what we did was reach out to this existing network. It was a really cool project that was called the Neighborhood Project. That's the 146 communities. And then we said, well, okay, well, if we start, I turned it into a beehive, right? Everybody's got their little hexagon. So those are the community names, and we mapped those to voting districts. And then somebody else came to me and said, hey, we've got 56 community councils that are already tied to the cops and already have active community members. So I was like, wait a minute. And they go, hey, if you just tell us how to capture stuff, we'll just give it to you because we know how to run our neighborhood. I was like, wow, that's perfect. So they came in, and because of that, we've been able to screen the entire city of Oakland, find where all the lead poisoning is, where all the kids at risk are. And now the problem is we don't know who to connect them with. Turns out it's probably going to be those community members. So here's how we jump forward. We reached out and just did network. I literally stood up in front of a crowd full of people at a Code for America event, City Camp, 2017, and said, hey, we're the Bay Area, we can fix lead poisoning, who's gonna help me? And about 80 people showed up in our workshop and stuck around through the year. And then we turned to Smart Oakland, and like Steph Curry in there. Anyway, so there's all kinds of people getting involved, right? Going, yeah, this is really bad. So the challenge was lead gets into people, no matter how old you are, it's really bad. Summary. And the challenge was, hey, we can't find it because it's invisible, so we can't stop it. So this being open with the community and saying, you guys know the answers about how to fix what's going on in your neighborhood. This is just what I know. How about I bring you the data? So it's a big community of people, big consortium, big collections of people fighting for a bunch of different rights. unified together around let's protect the kids. This piece is the cybersecurity piece, which is important to understand. The application that we're building to find the data, to find lead poisoning is 3 basic steps. You gotta find it first, then you can fund it, then you can fix it. So the data flow here, if you start in the upper left, is the people, I'm gonna bring the data to them on an app, and I say, hey, like high likelihood in that house, there's a problem. So first, we recommend you get your kid tested for lead in their blood, then test your house, and then know your rights. At any point, people can opt out, right? But they can also choose to share their results back up through public-facing data dashboards, like public Tableau. This is where we're going to be able to say, down to the council voting district or even street level, this is how many houses are hot on this block. 2 minutes left. I think I'm making it. So fund it then. Those become live dashboards that show the number of houses that need abatement, that sort of thing, which means then they become investment dashboards for energy efficiency promotions and things like that. So all the way to the end, the fixing it, that is just connecting you with contractors and doctors and things that can fix your problem for you. So it turns out there's all kinds of data, questions, security, but what we want to share with people is the value of understanding that when you control it, you can say all of the great things that will start happening for you, as an individual contributor versus they're tracking me, right, and selling my data about me to somebody else. So, have any questions about that? Let me know. And this is just that's the collision intersection, I call it. Constituents don't want anyone to track them, but they want a bunch of good stuff for free, right? The public sector wants to track you so they can keep calm and control of things, and they have to deliver city services. Regulatory agencies don't want people tracking people without telling them. And then the private sector says, hey, if you're not paying, you're what we're selling, right? You're the product. So these data collisions is kind of our big outreach for education. And I'll wrap up after this one, because I have another deck too that we can lead into, but I wanted to clarify what the data is. So we are predictively putting information together, sharing it with constituents to say, high likelihood, there's a problem in your house, but I don't know for sure. The next step is user-validated data. We're calling that level 2, because someone's got eyes on, they've tested it themselves, they've done there's these little check tests. Ask me for some, I have some. So when that's validated by the person in the house, the next step is an XRF scan, which is a scientific scan that is defensible in court. So there's 3 different levels. And here's some of the outcomes. If we do this, people can look and see, like Carfax for your house. Make sure that you don't get a hot house because you can't tell by looking at it. The next one would be, if you're in a house and your kid is sick, here's your little Find It, Fund It, Fix It app that connects you with a bunch of info and a lawyer. And lawyers can look at a whole city, so can city planners. And this is the last piece, is connecting to first responders. So we can connect all those people that are being poisoned with somebody who can help them. And that's it. There's other stuff, but, oh yeah, actually, real quick. When we ran this, I said, well, this was for Alameda County Healthy Homes, because they have a hard time finding the low-income folks who qualify for lead funds with kids. And so I said, okay, well, let me run the numbers, but the problem is we found everybody. They actually only have money for 70 homes, but we found everyone. So that's where we are now. Yeah, thanks, you guys.
One or two questions? There's a lot of interesting content there.
Yeah, it's packed. You guys can see it.
Any questions about her? I really appreciate what you're doing here. All the maps really get to me because it really just shows the scale of the problem. But also, I'm just close to Oakland, so I know what the problems are, and it's very real. And it's the way that you think and how to put it all together is really fascinating. So, I'm glad.
On metropolitanintelligence.com, that's where there's a bunch of maps, and I asked you guys all to go check that out too, because this is where you can zoom out the whole Bay Area, and we can put you guys in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got a demo that.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right. So Catherine, I'm thinking about you going next. So we had the pleasure to invite Catherine over to my home city in San Leandro about 2-3 months ago. And she told us all about Civic and what she's doing over there with Hack Oregon and her whole squad of folks. It's just so impressive what you're doing. I'm not going to spill the beans, but she is looking for cities. And I think that was our conversation, was how do we bring this kind of huge volunteer crew of folks to really mobilize, right, cities, just like what you did, Stephanie, with the 80 folks, right? I know Catherine, you've got about 125 folks just volunteering their time Tuesday, Thursdays, 6 to 9, just building apps and building solutions. I mean, that's the type of stuff I think we're moving towards when we're talking about education, is getting the community involved in a really meaningful way where they're solving things and collaborating with municipal government. So I'll let Catherine go into her spiel now. And she's the founder and executive director of Hack Oregon. And her squad of folks created the Civic Data Platform. So that's the action cluster name, Civic Data Platform, data by the people, for the people. So Catherine, why don't you come up here and we'll get you all set up.
Thank you. I have an extra special treat for everybody. We have our CTO, Michael, is also here for the Civic Platform.
All right, CTO's here. And did you have an actual USB or something?
You know what I like to do is just
Talk? Okay, because I didn't see it here. Did you want to go online with anything?
actually, no, I think let's just talk to the group because
Okay.
we have a demo tomorrow.
Right.
We'll be showing
And
this
you, yes, please. And tell them about everything if you can. I don't know if I can freeze this so that we don't see anything. Maybe just put it on the normal slide. Good to see you.
Okay, great. Wow. Well, there is a lot to talk about. I'm going to take just about 5 minutes and let Michael talk with you more about some of the tech side under the hood of how it works, particularly as it relates to security. But for those of you who are not familiar with our work, I'm Catherine. I'm the executive director of Hack Oregon, which is a nonprofit here in Oregon. We're building open data projects that are addressing issues with data that Oregonians care about, and we're doing this in a way that's very visual, and it's more than just coding cute apps. We're really building meaningful systems that cut at the core of how government can function, and in a way that is our best expression of really utilizing data science and other means of modern technology. So education is an imperative around how we're able to grow and evolve the data projects that we can produce. Over years, Hack Oregon has built dozens of freestanding software applications. Each one of those have addressed different themes that have had independent life cycles, including direct impact on policy, on investment decisions. They've informed the baseline of understanding for many of these complex information challenges. And from doing this over and over again, realizing that we can actually streamline this code base, of course, everything we do is open source, but we had some challenges year over year just taking our work and being able to push it farther, because when you answer one question with data, you just have 5 more questions immediately pop up. And so when you're looking at this from a perspective of how cities actually manage to get pilot funding and put a lot of time and effort into building these stand-up individualized software applications that address targeted issues, I just get tingles looking at the work that Stephanie's done, because it's such a powerful example of how you can take information, use innovative frameworks that are essentially freely available through the technology we have in open source, and then apply those with ingenuity and collaboration in partnership with government, using data to target in on something that moves the needle. But then even once you do that, you have another whole landscape ahead of you. And so what we've done is built a platform that's generalized some of these challenges that we tend to find as we build these types of stand-up applications. We do this with enormous groups of volunteers, and to give you a sense of scale, we got more than 2,000 applications this year of people who wanted to join Hack Oregon teams. We took the top 125, and half of them went through 3 to 6 months of training before they ever came into the project room. And then after that, it's a serious time commitment. It's 6 months of 10 hours a week, and you really get to know each other. And the people who are participating in this are often experts, but there's also people who are kind of just starting out and coming from all different angles. We're not just teaching people to code, we're teaching people how to build systems. And the material for how we do this is with public data, because it's such a wealth of potential information. And also, there's some serious systemic challenges when it comes to designing better information systems. But if you see this as the material for learning and our production environment is an applied setting, the outcomes really reflect that point in time of inquiry. And these projects with data, you can build them so that they are alive. And sort of passing this off to Michael, we have, that brings up some real challenges when you talk about security, right? When you're building open data and things that are very personal, affecting people's lives, we deal with sensitive data a lot. And how do we do that as part of a massive open source project that's also living on the web?
Yeah, so talking about not only security, but sort of every single component of the platform, there are a lot. So it's really, we're asking a lot of volunteers to come in and say, this is a story we want to tell. Can you make sure to tell the story, implement the APIs, get all the data together, do all the analysis, create a website, publish that in the cloud, make sure it's secure. So really one person can't do all of that. And even getting a team to do it reliably is really difficult. But what we've observed year over year is that a lot of the challenges for every project end up being really common. So as we iterate year over year, the question we sort of ask is, what is repeatable and how do we make it repeatable? And this year, we've gotten the closest we've ever gotten, and next year will again be the closest we've ever gotten to something that is a template for success, no matter what the project is. And some of those common problems end up being, now that we know a partner that has data that we would like to make public, how do we get that data from a partner in a secure fashion? How do we then take that and we analyze it? How do we make sure that there aren't bad actors within our own organization who could take this data, publish it on their own? And how do we make sure that when we're doing analysis on this data, if it has personally identifiable information in it, how do we make sure that what we end up publishing doesn't have that anymore? And then how do we make sure that this database isn't even going to fall over once we have that data? How do we make sure that that's now an API that can be hit, that can be used to build websites on top of? And a lot of that stuff ends up being common tools. So not to get too technical in 10 minutes, but like a lot of the common pipelines we're using here are just end-to-end encryption through data transfer. Everything's over TCP. We're also making sure that we're using the same database technology of everyone's on Postgres right now. And that helps a lot for making sure that our systems are patched and that our consistent volunteers can be subject matter experts in that technology. And this is also true for our APIs, which are currently in Django. And again, making sure that we have consistent volunteers who know Python can do that well. And by having this repeatability for all of those technologies, it means that we can bring in people who are subject matter experts and not expect them to be technology experts or cloud experts. Because now we can have people come in and say, hey, I know transportation systems really well, and I can add a lot to your analysis using my knowledge. And they can have the confidence of contributing to our platform without also accidentally setting up a bomb on the cloud that's going to make us accountable, because we have processes in place to make sure that whatever we build is going to be secure using those same principles we've developed year over year.
How much time do we have, Derek? 4 minutes? 3 minutes. Oh, that's nice. Okay. So I want to bring this up a level and just think about the big picture of what we're doing when we talk about solving issues with data. You can just hear that what we've been moving toward after all of this experience of doing different kinds of projects is that this is becoming streamlined and this is becoming a sort of massive engine. And you need to have certain types of platform things in place in order to drive continuous development, especially even if you're not working with volunteers. We've seen a lot of other types of companies like potentially Uber and Facebook that have started out trying to solve one challenge or connecting people. Airbnb, just having people rent out their vacation spaces. But now the value is in this data that's all connected. And when you think about the enormous amount of value that government has to drive insight, we have a fundamentally different position as custodians for how we utilize it. But the platforms that we look to from the tech space are influenced by a bottom line and the types of technologies that's available. we have a different type of option. You know, we're fundamentally not limited when it comes to building the types of solutions that cities want to see, and to do this in a rapid development fashion. But we also have to solve how to be safe and how to be responsible with privacy and with security. And so this is actually going to require an enormous amount of reflection, a hard look at our ethics and what we really want to do. And I don't just mean Hack Oregon. I mean, it's this is participation with everyone. And so when I think about the only possible way that we can be successful to grow this into something that is really useful to move the needle on how we're handling these democracy as an information challenge, we have to be on education. We're going to have to talk a lot about not only just the specializations for how to implement better security standards, and they're going to change and to keep pace with visualization and all of the things for the web, but this is multidisciplinary, and this is not individualized types of training where you certify somebody in a code school. This is getting a skill set that then you can contribute as part of a group, and it's a long-term, sustained effort. And tomorrow, we are going to be launching our civic platform live at Revolution Hall. It's about a mile away from here. I will hook you guys up with tickets if you haven't already got them. We're going to be sold out, about 850 people at this theater. It's a live demo, and sometimes when words sort of fail to describe exactly what we've got in terms of lightning in a bottle, we can create a direct experience. And so we're really happy that you're here in Portland, and happy to see you around for the next couple of days at the conference.
So just FYI, that demo day for Hack Oregon for the Civic Platform is on the agenda for Global Think Tank on Thursday at the very bottom at 6 p.m. Revolution Hall. So feel free to talk to Catherine, but I'll be there.
Yeah. Hackoregon.org. You may still be able to get tickets online. We opened up a few extra just for the conference, so they're free, but they'll be checking tickets at the door. So.
Any questions for Catherine?
Do people get to, I know you guys engage with cities, but is there a cost if people want to use it before they go through training? Or like,
Sure.
separate out?
Yeah, so, well, Stephanie, we met in Oakland several months ago, and so we've been learning a lot more about what's going to be successful to help cities make this work for them. And so first and foremost, the code as of tomorrow when we launch, it's going to be completely 100% free and open on the web. So you can download and clone that repo for Civic if you want to, right? But for our platform, and as we're growing, managing the different data sources and creating opportunities that when we have more data that are using similar API models and other analytics, that we can then create more advanced cross-regional opportunities for insight. There is value to wanting to meet all of our standards so that we can actually integrate that into the main platform. And that's still possible to do without any training if you've got people who know what they're doing, can read the documentation, and that you also know how to handle your data. It's possible that someone can be contributing to the platform, creating their own things, and they don't need training, and they don't really need to pay anything. On the other hand, what we've been realizing is there's a huge interest from cities. We just got overwhelmed as it started to get out over the last several months, and I was traveling, and frankly, just the amount of interest that we had that then got blocked by an enormous amount of other almost policy considerations with security, and then like cities have a bunch of ideas of what they want to do, much like what you've managed to pull off. And with looking at lead poisoning, there's a lot of work, as you know, that goes into getting just to a place where you can set up a project. We can help to facilitate that, and we can work with cities to make this a plan for success, and also have it match standards that are now being reused, so that when you do a project like this, if it's running in Civic, it's now reproducible in another place. And it probably would just take a little bit of adjustment to the types of codes and data that you already have to make that happen, but you don't have to go through all the R&D in the first place because you've already done it. Some cities are starting with ideas, some cities are starting with successful pilots, some cities are actually working with legacy systems that have been a decade that haven't been touched. And so every single city is going to need different consideration. And so we are accepting applications for an inaugural cohort of members for the Civic Software Foundation, which I guess they're kind of spilling the beans, but we are Hack Oregon is growing into the Civic Software Foundation rather than being a locally focused nonprofit building projects here in Oregon. Hack Oregon will remain like a rapid prototyping lab building projects in Oregon, but we're going to be focused nationally on helping our member cities get their data running into Civic and building the things that they want to see.
And just FYI, I think as we kind of do the work with the Education Supercluster, how can we leverage Urban Leap as a project platform to kind of track the metrics, track the goals, kind of get what the Civic Software Foundation wants and wants to see happen onto that platform, so we can actually add cities to that, so they can see the metrics of how if they were
Right.
deployed, what would it look like.
Yeah.
So we're looking to see how we can structure some of this work so that we can actually do it fluidly
Mhm.
and then really connect the dots and people together to really make that happen.
Yeah, and if I can make just an ask to the group before we go and something to think about, if as we have success with the Civic platform, this is a win for everybody who's working with the Education Supercluster, because I think that we're going to need a really good roundtable of people who are thinking about how education in the smart city space is enabling the actual technology outcomes that we want to see. And I don't know until we start working with our member cities really where they're going to need the support. I know there's going to be technical troubleshooting they want, but ultimately they're going to need to figure out ways to work with existing partnerships or working with open source or having talent that they have to build this stuff themselves. And so what is going to be required is this is not just technical training. I really feel like this is a workflow challenge and a policy challenge to be able to have everything running on all cylinders. And so I hope that I can have a continued dialogue with this group, and as we grow through the supercluster, to roundtable all of the different ways that we can help cities make this work.
I'm sure you're gonna have more time after demo day.
Yeah, and see you tomorrow at Revolution Hall.
Great. All right. Thank you, Catherine. Someone's watch is here too. I don't know whose this is, but free watch. If anyone wants one. All right. So back to Farid and Shiva. So I think the advanced flood warning one, right? So back to Farid with Sonoma State and Shiva Kumar, advanced flood warning environmental awareness system for the city of Roanoke Park. So the one, that they presented before was IoT-enabled smart city workshop for city, private and public communities. So that was the one they did last time. Is it this one here? Shiva, is it this one here? Which one is the one you're doing now? This one? Oh, is it a PDF? Yeah, I don't think they have, we can do PDF, right? I guess you just have to slide it.
Good afternoon again. Thanks for sticking out, I think. My name is Farid again, and I am here to present you a test case of how, in one particular case, how Sonoma State and a particular company, Do Mobility, which was represented by Shiva, and the city of Roanoke Park, how we were managed to do one project in particular, which in this case was actually establishing a flood warning system for the city, and to kind of tell you a little about our experience, the challenges, and also Shiva will talk a little about the technical issues that we ran into and what kind of feedback we received from the city itself. So just to very broadly give you a background about the city. City of Roanoke Park is, let me just show you the map. We're kind of like northern west part of California. In particular, the city of Sonoma, city of Rohnert Park is actually a part of Sonoma County in Northern California. That area in particular is a little well known. Maybe some of you have heard about the fire which was there in November, and unfortunately that resulted in about 7% of the city of Santa Rosa was completely destroyed because of the fire. And recently we haven't had a lot of rain. If you live in California, you know that. But when we do have rain, especially in Northern California, sometimes we do have these flash of floods. And because of that, in particular, that area is also has a lot of wineries. The wine industry is estimated to be $1.3 billion for Northern California, that area that we live in. And therefore, having floods obviously can have severe impact on not only for people, residents, but also for the agriculture and economy of that part of California. So the problem that we've had is basically the city of Rohnert Park, especially because of the exact location that is located at, which is basically we're surrounded by these hills. When it floods, it really destroys a lot of residential areas in that particular area in the city. So city has been dealing with this issue for a long time, and over probably about a year and a half after long discussions, the task was given to the university to see if there is any particular way that we can actually come up with some projects for students that collaboratively, along with cooperating with some of the industries, local industries, we can design a system which can potentially tell whether there's going to be any flood or not. So it's kind of a flood prediction system. So that was basically the task that was basically given to the university by the city. And the idea was whether this, before they actually go and spend a lot of money on different existing system for a flood monitoring system, whether there's any possibility that we can actually come up with some existing technology and show it to a test case. Like what kind of, first of all, for example, that data that you gather, where does it go? How are you going to manage that data? How secure is that data? Or, for example, how much is the cost of maintaining that data? So all of those things were questions for City of Rohnert Park. So it just turned out that this could be a great case for the university and university students to kind of just come up with these little projects and basically see if they can come up with a reasonable approach to resolve potentially this kind of problem. So what happened is basically, I'm just going to jump ahead. In collaboration with Do Mobility, it took about a year for 3 teams of students to actually design a system, both hardware and software, to see if we can create a flood, basically a water flow monitoring system. One of the things that came out from this experience was basically bringing in people from Amazon and IBM, because as you know, one of the issues is, so where do you keep the data? How do you actually visualize the data? How do you show it to people? How do you actually perform the predictions? So this was a really interesting experience because up till that time, the city of Rohnert Park had really had no interaction with any of these high-tech companies. And it was a great way for them, along with the university, along with another industry, to get together, talk about like these issues and how the city can potentially utilize some of the existing companies. In fact, through these discussions, we were able to get 2 years of free service from Amazon, and that's how we basically started using AWS as a main source of collecting the data. This experience, which basically Shivo is going to talk about some of the technical issues, but really the basic idea was the goals of the projects, whether we can, by deploying 5 of these systems throughout the city, whether there's any possibility that over a long-term period, we can potentially reduce some of the flood effects by perhaps 15%, or there could be a fast flood response that can tell people to evacuate before anything severe happens or any major damage happens to the area. In addition to that, we also wanted to see if there is any possibility to predict some of the cases, some of the flood cases that can happen. through the existing system, and in particular with collaboration with people from Amazon and AWS. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Shiva, and he's going to go over some of the technical challenges that we went through and how we resolved some of those.
Thanks, Farid. So this is about our time frame deployment, what like Farid mentioned, how we went about it. Initially, when we started in the phase 1, we all used the open source hardware and open source cloud, where we don't have to pay because university doesn't have the budget. But we had a good use cases. City said that we have use cases. Can you utilize the students and bring out some prototypes? Then we utilize that. And now, like Farid mentioned, we have industry coming forward that's saying that why don't you use our kind of product solutions and show them proof of concept with them. That's how we tried with the Amazon Web Services. Samsung came out and they have got one Arctic platform. Then we started implementing using that. So how we went about is that in terms of the these are, of course, the key performance indicators. As per that, we have the spreadsheet, like Saku mentioned it in the spreadsheet. What are the key performance you're going to have that? So these are the key performance we have in the action cluster sheet, and we are following it up. Though we are very close, but some of the aspects is not in our hand because we're trying to collect the data. The goal is for last 1 year, we have collected a lot of data. Now this is the time how do you derive a product out of from that data. So this is talk about my block diagram of the system, how we went about it. See, typically we analyzed it. What are the components available are there? I noticed that there is a satellite system available in the mountains, which is again donated by Campbell satellite company. They have donated that. We said, okay, why don't you use the satellite thing? So that time, LoRa and Sigfox, everything was coming. That time we didn't have any mesh networking. I think now we can use the really good mesh technologies. So this is the block diagram, and then we have the rain gauge sensor, which connects to the Sonoma State campus. They have a the control room where all the status of the rainfall, it goes through that rain gauge sensor. And then once we have that level of the water, it triggers it. Again, we use here the open source hardware migrated to a fully production version there. And it comes to the Sonoma State. We have developed our own cloud, then connected to the AWS cloud, and then connected to the SSU LAN network, because we don't want to really connect to the outside world, and then pass it on to the city. It is up to them what they're going to use the data, because we don't want to directly send to the citizens. It is going to the city. They will make a decision whether to share with the citizens, or we have to keep themselves, or is just in data on that. So, and then this is some of the the analytics we got it. When is the peak rain? When is the off-peak rain? What is the month you have to really careful? What precautions they have to take? We got it from the initially with the IBM Bluemix. We integrated IBM Bluemix with the hardware, and then got the details. On the bottom side, you see that along with that, we also decided, is again came from the students, that instead of just measuring the rainfall, why don't we measure the environmental also, like for example, temperature, humidity, then light, then your gas sensor. So we just build one box where all the sensors are installed, and it's connected through a general purpose hardware, and then again that data is sent there. Because the power is available, connectivity is available, we thought let's make use of those components, and we did. And today we are able to read at least 6 sensor data in the mountains, which includes the temperature, humidity, gas, light, and the rain gas sensors. So we have integrated with that. It's available today. Now we need to go onto the fully production model. It's all the data has been collected. It is available for the city to analyze it and how we can go into the production model. So like I mentioned in one of the key performance parameters for the next phase is that how we make that as a production and get the real data and how it is getting beneficial. That's the important thing, right? The action cluster form is to see how it is getting benefited, what is the occurrence from this one. I think next, probably when we present next time, we would like to come out with some real-time data. That's our goal for the next GCTC conference. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. The goal is to scale it up and bring the same technology instead of reinventing the thing. We would like definitely work with others.
Right. Anything in the pipeline?
As of now, we have one in Asia with
receive and follow up on the results and take that to the next step? Did they just, donate the virtual cloud, or they were interested to take this to the further steps and support you in expanding this?
Yeah, I can provide a Farid, you can add. The Amazon when approached, they are actually providing all their cloud and it's AWS IoT cloud. Definitely they want to use this data and how they can improve on their product. Yes, they want to do that. The only we are seeing the distance is the little issue, because they are in San Jose, even Sonoma is a little far for them. We're just trying to do everything on the virtual.
Yeah, but as a result of this discussion, after Amazon actually offered a 2-year subscription to the system, the city now is negotiating with Amazon for an unrelated thing because they have a lot of other data. But now that they're becoming familiar with the system, they're actually willing to buy their service for other type of data that they have. And with respect to your question, as you know, because of the fire in November, right now one of the big issues in Northern California is fire detection. So the federal government is providing a huge amount of funding for any kind of system that can detect fire.
Oh, really? I wasn't aware of it.
It is actually a $600 million that.
Can I get some of that money myself?
You want to take some?
We need to talk, because we have fire prediction too.
So there's definitely a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
For
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just appreciate all the information being shared because I feel like there's so much more details that we can actually build on, and that's where the sidebar meetings I think can really come in handy. And as we start really kind of building systems for us to kind of talk, that's where we can kind of dig in more. I feel like is such a, we need to find better ways of doing that basically. Stephanie, you want to go for your smart city vision, strategic planning, and digital transformation methodology. Are we going to be able to see your metropolitan intelligence platform idea at some point? Sounds interesting.
At some point, if everyone else can get into their spots. Do we have enough time?
No, we have one more. Shiva has one more. I don't know if he wants to do it still.
But I don't know if there's a way later this week or something, but yeah, I can.
Okay.
do.
Yeah.
It's,
Maybe like a private show first, and then
oh yeah,
afterwards.
to preview it.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the thing I've been working 22 hours a day on for 6 months.
Yeah, I've been seeing you. We got your emails. Does this work?
Yeah.
Doesn't look like it's full screen though. Okay.
Okay, so Hayden. So Vision Architecture, so I have 3 companies, right? Vision Architecture, Smart City Consulting. Through the years, I'll fly through that tombstone slide again, right? Like the logos. Really what I'm sharing with you here is a way to plan your smart city activities, like before you even know what you're doing. And that's really just come from working with all these clients, you just figure out a better way to do stuff. So think of this as sort of just my blueprint to give to everyone that a lot of people have already worked to develop. And feel free to ask questions. I'm going to focus more per the request on the cybersecurity piece. All right, but it's just basically a huge checklist and a bunch of workshops you can use to figure out your plans for your smart city activities. So there are 5 phases: vision and strategic alignment, program architecture, business requirements, project plans, program implementation, adoption, communications, and outreach. So the goal of when I offered and said, hey, would anyone find this useful? It was like, sure, submit it, make it be part of what people can use. It was really with the education supercluster in mind, just because there's so many different groups coming together, figuring out what are we going to tell people and how do we interact. And I said, well, we could use my methodology just to get ourselves organized. And that was the thought initially. So anybody who's interested in using this, there are multiple phases. I was suggesting we can kind of just use phase 1 for people, but if people want to use more than that, that's cool too. So the goal would be that we have basically an education baseline to enable digital transformation, right? And this is really about digital literacy, because unless you can talk to little kids and 100-year-olds, it doesn't move forward, right? Somebody's going to block you if they don't get it. Somebody's going to be afraid and retract, right? There are all these ways for smart city projects to fail, and it's generally just because people are afraid of something, right, or they don't get it. So we have to have that generation approach to engagement. And then it actually moves pretty smoothly. So, right, it's once the light goes on, somebody goes, ooh, I get what's in it for me. This is like major power that comes to me. Now I'm going to lead it, right? So that's when communities start taking over and things, which is what we want to have happen. Okay, so fast forward. Let's see. So you've already seen that. That's just a snapshot, right? So 5 phases altogether. They're built to move really fast. I think what we've learned is that when people spend too much time thinking about stuff and they forget like that when you get inspired and you go, oh, look what we could do, and then everyone slows down and takes forever to think about it, it kind of starts dying on the vine, right? So we do super fast workshops, 2 hours tops for sort of the as-is state, 2 hours for the to-be state, 2 hours for Charlie, which we call that sort of the roadmap of getting from A to B, right? Your current state to your future state. And then the delta, which is metrics. How are we going to measure every one of our steps so we make sure that we hit our goals? And that's the KPI piece, right? So that's all kind of already in here. So vision and strategic alignment is the thing that I think I would like to suggest we focus on, that everyone maybe start using. It's a quick way to get all of these super clusters organized in the action clusters to start pulling the trigger on projects on the ground. And then to summarize the other couple phases, program architecture is referring to, I don't know if everyone's familiar with the open group architecture framework. A lot of government agencies have used it to talk about sort of the various layers of, business architecture, data architecture, application architecture, and infrastructure architecture. We add a layer on top of that is user experience architecture. What are we actually building for the humans? But so that's phase 2, is talking about those really critical 5 layers first. What's the scale of what we're looking at? The next phase 3 is business requirements. I know that sounds obvious, but how many times have you worked on projects that had no requirements? Like, I just think that should be outlawed. So that's phase 3, make sure you have the business requirements. Phase 4, program implementation. That's more about how are you going to start rolling out smart city projects that are ecosystem things, right? Because these are not just like normal projects anymore. So you have to have a smart city program. That's what this phase is about. And then basically using your smart city program to still map it to your SDLCs and project management offices. Otherwise, there's nowhere for that thing to go to get approved. And then the adoption and outreach, believe it or not, is the most important part. Other than vision, it's how are you going to tell anybody and convince anyone to be part of what you're doing? That's a digital transformation piece. So if you go to visionarchitectureinc.com, you can look into details for these breakouts, but the summary is, where are you today? Where do you want to go? How are you going to get there? How are you going to measure? And so we use like these little visual drawing roadmap things. So it's kind of fun. They're actually all like a game. And you're identifying kind of where everybody sits now, the kind of people who totally understand the process of today versus the people who are always looking toward the future, the people who always are in charge of making something work, the implementation people, and then the people who like to measure and make sure everyone's like doing the right thing, right? Those 4 characteristics are key in all of these games that we put together to help people figure out how we're going to get from where we are today to the future. So it's fun. We turn it into kind of a game. So if anybody's available during the week this week, we could do a couple, whip them out real quick. It's pretty fun, I think. This is what I've heard. Okay, so nutshell, phase 2, we already went through that. That's the 5 layers. I make a reference to this because if you were in the room before, you saw my story here about the app that we have. Without deciding what the process is and getting buy-in from all different people, like don't even try to build anything, right? Because if you can't get to this level of understanding and you get the buy-in of the people who are going to use the system, it's kind of not worth moving forward, right? Because you're not going to have an integrated system approach to it. Phase 3, never start without business requirements. This is the place where we're going to dive into cybersecurity, right? Because initially when you say, well, yeah, we want to build these things together, then you have to speak in detail about the data taxonomy, right? Because now it's not a corporation doing it, it's a community, and then it's the government, and then it's nonprofits, and so you do have to kind of create some sort of taxonomic hierarchy, and then have people, or I think I shared in Smart Oakland, we use that little hexagon structure to talk about the different neighborhoods, and then you can get a group of like 30 people or something to be able to, agree what do we want if we're the constituents at the center? How much of our information do we want to share with these different groups? And how much might we gain if we actually shared more? But the only way we're going to share it is if we really understand where it goes, right? So these are kind of the processes to talk about what is the value of individual level data versus groups and communities. As you know, in communities right now, or generally public sector data is like the aggregate, right? Like no names, and everyone talks about anonymized data. But for me, I'm like, if I find 2,000 kids that are getting poisoned right now, aggregate data doesn't help anybody, right? I have to know that they're in Unit 2, and I have to get that data to the right people, right? So when you have that conversation with parents, you can talk about that and say, okay, but I can't just say always anonymize me. In the case of like, yeah, I want the firefighter to know that there's 5 kids in the house or something like that, right? But you can just make that description and have your system support it. So, and I think everybody was in the room before and saw this, but I'll repeat it. So here's this collision, this intersection, right? And it looks complicated, but it's really not. It's still about the mindset of each one of the people in these tracks, right? Upper left, individuals, we're all these people, right? Oh, 2 minutes. We want stuff, but we don't want anyone to track us, but I want my stuff to be personalized, right? It's kind of a, I don't want to be tracked, but track me because I want all my stuff to be right. If you're in the private sector, you just come right out and say, hey, I'll give people free stuff, and then I'm going to sell them all day, every day, to everyone I can make money from, right? I mean, that's how it works. And then regulatory agencies just say, like, stop tracking everybody, not telling them. And then the public sector is saying, I have to track you so I can, like, if there's an emergency, I can, and plus there's like 400,000 of you. How am I supposed to track individuals? So we have a process to go through this and figure it out. And nutshell, digital transformation is hard, but it's just a list of things. You just have to be patient, right, and go down the list. And yeah, but when you do, people jump up and take over, right? I mean, when you start saying, I'm going to explain how this values you, and you own the currency of the data, people like push you out of the way to start saying how you're supposed to do this for them in their community. And that's the lead poisoning thing. But yeah, so when people understand what you're doing, they jump in and are ready to share all kinds of data. But again, only when they realize that they own it. There's a firefighter story again. So yeah, I do want to ask the crowd, if anyone has an idea about, and I'd suggest you're all going to start having this happen when you use technology to do a better thing, and then you find like 2,000 people that need services that there are no people to give services to them. Like that's a whole nother thing. Like Kat said, right? You find data and then you go, oh no, there's like 20 more questions. Or like, how do I? And it turns out it is going to be the community members that say, yeah, give us that data and we'll go door to door, which I just wouldn't have even thought of that, right? But it turns out that's a pattern. So I'll stop there. I mean, because it's over. Any questions? Nope. All right, well, definitely sit it seriously. You have a question? Yeah. I guess it depends who's the ringleader, I guess. When you say who's going into the city, do you mean like literally the government? Yeah, so there's a couple different processes. One is talk to everybody with who they're comfortable with first. So just city people together, then just constituents together, just private sector together. But you share the results with each one before they go into their own workshop, basically. So it's kind of a chain reaction, right? Like the group before you thinks this, and then that group, the next group will be even more, contribute more to fill in the gaps. But so that's a really fast iteration process. So we just keep saying, here's the new input from these other groups. And you're talking about the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So the workshops take 30 minutes. Maybe you get a mental mind dump from everyone, and you put all those maps together, and then suddenly just everyone pours all kinds of information in. But yeah, in city, just let people be comfortable with who they're comfortable with. But that's the other part about that personality kind of matching piece of like you're very much a process person, you're an idea person, you're an implementer, trying to keep things stable, or you're like measuring every step. And those 4 people types have to be together. Otherwise, it's just. Right, it's not about Myers-Briggs or anything like that. It's just, those groups are great, and then you can team them up, and then they fill out the whole picture together. But, yeah.
Do you think maturity model for small cities should be considered also? How cities work? I mean, it's not enough for
Yeah, totally. And like the work you guys are doing in Sonoma State, like I think if we kind of put these structures together, we can help people figure out the different areas. Like, okay, you see in my stuff, I pretty much stay away from the tech, right? I mean, because there are people who want to do, talking about hardware and like data communication stuff. We can do that stuff, but yeah, I think if we can, in the education supercluster, kind of put all the little patchwork together, I absolutely think, because people keep asking me, when are you going to come up with a certification program? I'm like, well, because I'm not a university. I think it should be deployed through a university, but maybe not totally. But would you agree with that, Derek? Like, I think there's all kinds of good ideas about but to make something more formalized, right? Like if someone engages with the education supercluster, they get something out of it, and it's got a stamp on it. Yeah.
That's how we're building a culture. It doesn't make any sense to, I feel like, to join something and then create something and then deploy it, and then not be used.
Yeah.
It needs to be kind of iterative, and I think just really productive and have the buy-in with the folks who are building it. So.
Oh yeah. Oh, I guess I meant for the for the outside world. When they go, oh, if I follow what you guys are doing, do I get a sticker? Do I get a certification or something? Like, but just me as a member of this group, I think that would be great. Just because people ask me, but I'm not going to do it by myself or anything. But yeah.
There was a discussion about creating some alumni organization of GCTC.
Ah.
So it was last year, I think a year ago. Somebody said we have a logo, right? GCTC logo, and they were asking if they participated in one of the rounds, can they use a logo on their own website?
Oh yeah.
And almost like for if you graduate from university, then
Yeah.
you get a sticker that you graduated from.
Oh,
Right?
right.
You may not be part of the university anymore.
Yeah.
That was sort of like, again, that's a valid idea.
I think that would be.
Yeah.
I think that would be powerful.
Yeah.
Because being an action cluster means something.
Yeah.
At this point, for all of us. And
Yeah.
being part of a super cluster, the work we put in, which actually works not just your own project team as an action cluster, you actually put in the work at some level.
Right.
That definitely deserves something. So perhaps we can look at what that parameter of forming an action cluster
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Actually, the transportation supercluster is building a wiki page for not just for transportation, for all action clusters. I'm sure some of you have already put in your content. That's sort of like effort that we want to create a record, or to keep a record of your participation.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 years later, when you go to talk to somebody, you may be able to say, hey, look at this.
Pull up the
This is a record of your participation in GCTC. It has all your everything. Like you have your metrics, you have your solutions and challenges, whatever you've submitted already, will be kept as a record.
Yeah.
And then that's sort of like that means something because that's a record that you actually worked on.
Yeah, Megan was bringing that up. I think we should start using it.
Yeah.
I don't think we adopted it fully yet with the wiki. I know transportation supercluster has, but I don't think utility definitely hasn't. And I think for us, as we start, it's important with the infrastructure work we're doing now that we consider some of that stuff.
Yeah. And I know I have to get off the stage, and thank you, Derek. But I love that, like the urban Leap, and and Kat's platform and everything, and like hopefully stuff that from MI, Metropolitan Intelligence, my stuff that's open as well. If we put those pieces together, I think my gut reaction is there's still that in-person need, I think, to meet, right? And I do want to offer that for anybody who's in the Bay Area. We just started talking about it, but I mean, we have the top floor of City Hall in Oakland, right? Like, so we could have training stuff there. We have monthly access to the Civic Design Lab, so we could have education supercluster brainstorming in there. Maybe some training stuff, but Oakland's down to be a hub of some sort, so might as well use it.
Yeah, and Sheila's there too. And I'm there too.
Yeah, you're there too, but anyway, so thanks you guys. All right.
Yeah, Martin, you are there?
Yes, I'm still here.
All right. Thank you so much for being so late. It's 12, I think almost 30 minutes past midnight for you. It's especially in Ireland. I don't know where you are, but I think you are at the office, right?
Yes, I'm in the office at the moment, but almost getting home.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Good evening
problem.
again. Because I have been talking for last 3 clusters, I thought let me bring a speaker from Europe. So I'll stop talking. I think he will talk about that. Yeah, Martin, again, thanks. So let's go on to the slide number 1. So this is the one action cluster we created, like Derek mentioned. This was the second action cluster we created and bought the Ireland team to what experience they have been doing, especially in the European Commissions. The goal of this project was that how do we integrate the European Commission projects with the US cities, and how do we exchange the technology expertise on that. So that was the initiative. The name is Galway Smart City. I think they have done a lot of job on that. So I'm moving on to the second slide. Thank you. So this is our the team. Martin Sarano, who is based in Ireland, who is the principal investigator and data scientist. And we have Sir Neil O'Brien, who is the e-government former Ireland senator, who was here last GCTC meeting, and myself, and we have Dr. Anthony Jara from HOP, which is based in Spain. So actually, when we created this one first time, again, there we used the open source hardware, and the Ireland University, they have came out with their own IoT cloud, which is called Open IoT Cloud. There are a lot of data has been put into Open IoT Cloud, which was a free, and all the students from Santa Clara University and Sonoma State, they have started using that. So that was the initiative. Now we are going to really productionization. That was again a derivative of European, that 2020 program. We bought that technology to that. So we have done the first project. Maybe Martin, I'm into the first one. Maybe you can start with the Insight Center of Data Analytics. I am in the slide in the map there. No? Yeah.
Perfect.
Slide number
thank
3.
you, Shiva, and thanks for the introduction. And thank you, everybody, for this opportunity to talk about the project. As Shiva already mentioned, the National University is the scientific coordinator of this project. And then we have good collaboration with the municipality here in Galway. Galway is the western part of the country. As you can see, is in the middle of the country. And we are fortunate that it's one of the cities that has been awarded last year as the most peaceful city in the world. And by 2020, we are the capital culture of Europe. So you can imagine the number of projects and ideas and compromises that we are acquiring for these situations. And one of those projects is precisely the air quality monitoring, and also in the context of smart cities, combine this with traffic management. This is quite innovative in that sense. We make consultations with the citizens, and they are always concerned about the traffic, like in every city. But the innovation part in here is that we are not going to use pollution sensors like in other cities. We're going to use the noise sensors, because one of the directives in Ireland is precisely to keep the noise levels in a very low levels, according to the European specification or European law. And as I mentioned before, the European Capital of Culture will bring a lot of musicians, a lot of stream performers, a lot of festival, of course, activities, and this is what we will be monitoring and controlling with the traffic sensors. And next slide, please, Shiva. Slide number 4.
Yes, I'm in slide number 4.
Okay, perfect. So this is just an infographic of what are the type of projects that the municipality, the institute, and the industries are working on, mainly focused in smart government and smart education, smart citizen from the point of view of co-creation and engagement, smart energy in terms of smart buildings and smart cars, smart building in terms of e-government, in terms of infrastructures and saving energy, and smart mobility for citizens and people are visitors in the city, including transportation, including bike sharing programs, or even public buses sharing programs. Of course, every city in Ireland has different smart city programs, and what we have achieved also to have a national program, what we call OASC Ireland. You might know already the OASC initiative, which is Open Agile Smart Cities. More than that 56 countries involved now, and many cities be part of this. And we have the major capitals in Ireland as being part of this one. You can visit the website, is oask.ie, Open Agile Smart City.ie. And then you can see the initiatives, the projects, and what we are doing connecting cities. And as I mentioned, every city has their own program, their own interest and priorities. And This is what we call the national initiative in terms of collaboration and connecting. And slide number 5, please.
Yeah, you are on slide 5.
Then getting back into the problem, as I mentioned before, the traffic is something that concerns the citizens. And in these co-creative workshops, we identified that it's quite simple to install noise sensors because we have traffic lights that can be attached to them. And we already have loops in the intersections, and all these ones can also act as a sensors for this monitoring of the traffic. And then by doing a correlation in terms of data, we can identify the volume of people, the volume of traffic, and of course, optimize these conditions according to the noise levels. And you might be asking yourself now, okay, but what is the level of a car that is circulating at 60 kilometers per hour or 90 kilometers per hour according to the speed limits? So we are not monitoring the engines. We are monitoring exactly the friction of the tires on the road. That's why it doesn't have to be very noisy in terms of decibels levels. It's pretty much what we are sensorizing is the friction. That's why we can keep a very good monitorization on that respect. So the sensors are not in the high expectations. It's kind of a 50 to 30 centimeters of the soil. Then this is the way how we are doing in the traffic lights. And slide number 6, please.
Yes, slide number 6, please. Yeah.
So this is already a map that has been produced by some external companies in the city of Galway. As you can see on the right-hand side, most noisy part is when you connect to the motorway. On the left, or in the middle, there is a river that crosses the city. And this is more or less the city center. And it's also very noisy because all the pedestrian streets, as I mentioned before, Galway is very cultural, it's very international friendly, and there is a lot of musicians, performers, and artistic activities. It's called Shop Street, the main street in the city, and this is when we have tested some with sensors in a temporal basis. We haven't gone into the permanent basis because all these devices were experimental, developed in our lab, deployed for some hours, some days, but as an evolution of this project, we have an agreement with the Hop company in Spain and also with the Stu Mobility in Silicon Valley to have the software from one side and the hardware in the other side, more in production mode rather than a prototype. But the most important in this map is that we are deploying the sensors in those noisy areas to permanently monitorize the noise levels. This is going to be an initiative with the municipality, will be an initiative also with the police, guardas, the police station, also monitorize this one and don't break any regulations, which is also important to highlight in this project. Slide number 7, please.
Yeah, you are on slide 7.
Perfect. So this is the prototype that we already tested or we built in our lab, and we connect a display. On the center, you see some DIY or kind of an in-lab technology that contains Wi-Fi, connects to the Wi-Fi protocol to these sensors that it contains. They are essentially microphones and some gases and some temperature and humidity is kind of a basic stuff. But the most important is that we have implemented with our protocol, which is called Vitalos. Vitalos is an operating system for smart cities that is an evolution of OpenIoT. OpenIoT was the open source project, as Shiva already mentioned. Then we just extended to have a smart city sensors and protocol according to the specification from the municipality in terms of big data. The consequence of executing this prototype is when the sensors reach some levels, there is a traffic diversion program. If the noise is very low, so that means either there is a traffic jam or there is no traffic. And we don't like this, or we don't want this condition because we cannot know if it's traffic. We can only count cars that are circulating and when there is noise in the roads. So then we want to keep the levels at some point. So we put the green, just to give an example, when there is no noise, we put the green light. Then we start to sensorize and evaluate the noise in real time. When it reaches the level that we want to avoid, then we change to red. And then that implies that the diverted traffic will go instead to one road to another road that is sensorized. And then with this one, we are creating what we call a traffic balancing based on noise sensitization or based on sensor. I hope it's clear enough. I will not go into much details, but in the last exhibition, we bring our booth and we make the demo as well. And hopefully in the next exhibition, I will be committed to go and bring the new version with privacy and security embedded. Slide number 8, please.
Yeah, Martin, just on the time check, we have a minute, I think. Then after that, we'll open it, minute or two, then open up for the questions and answers. Yeah, just a time
Yes.
check, yeah. Go ahead, please.
Number
Yeah.
8.
Yes, we are on slide number 8.
Okay. Yes. So before we went to the streets and before we went to test in the city, so we tested in our laboratory or our outdoor laboratory. This is our car park in the institute, and we sensorized this post emulating the traffic roads. As you can see on the carpet, there is one-way road in this car park. One of those car parks that has one-way circulation. And then what is just showing in here is not the prototype. Now this is real product on the left and in the bottom. You can see these boxes with sensors that are the products from Hop Ubiquitous. This is in the market. It's already tested. We contribute and we collaborate with them to design the specifications. And that's why they manufacture this one based on those specifications. And on the top, we are still planning and discussing with our partners in ST Micro in France to try to use this IoT device with security embedded. They call it the IoT security product or a solution. And this will imply or will include some firmware updates and firmware encryption in terms of the data that they send. But this will be the next version of the product. And last but not least, I will go to slide number 9.
Yeah, we are on slide number 9.
What we are doing here, and you might be aware that in Europe, on the 25th of May, there is a new regulation. On the left-hand side, bottom side, you see the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. And this is precisely the privacy aspect that we want to address now. Any data or any specific information that can be mapped with the individual. For example, if your mobile phone gets connected to a Wi-Fi spot, has a specific MAC address, and because the mobile phone is registered to yourself in your name, in your contract, it can be associated. So essentially, a MAC address now can be one of your identifiers as a person. So this is one of the aspects, as an example, that we will protect. We will encrypt this information in those devices. The point that we will serve the citizens as well as a hotspot, also as a sensor device, and also as a traffic monitoring, noise monitoring device. So, but we are going to work towards this encrypting and decrypting information that can be associated to humans in terms of a Wi-Fi protocol. And then on the other side, we have the technology side, which is the cybersecurity part, which is aligned data protection, access control, and trust. These levels are based on standards that we are following from the European Commission and also standard organizations in Europe, like ETSI, the equivalent to NIST, but we have the ETSI, European Technology Telecommunication Standards Institute. And this is the way how we are designing and implementing the implementation of this hardware or this software as well. And last but not least, the concept in the slide number 10, just to differentiate between cybersecurity and privacy. In the slide number 10, I explained just the differences in terms of what information can be going to privacy, which is precisely this information that is associated to a human or to an individual. And then in cybersecurity, we protect all the integrity of the data, we protect all the platform itself to be hacked or to be accessible from the management, but also the infrastructure, the physical device, in the case that someone or some vandalism activities go and steal the device. In the moment that this is disconnected from the network, in the moment that this is disconnected from the location, the device will be self-blocked, or will be the firmware will be deleted itself. And this is what we are dealing with ST Microelectronics in this safe device hardware perspective. So essentially, the device will be not useful anymore if they disconnect it, just to protect so the information that will be in the edge or be stored in the flash memory of the device. With this one, I conclude. I think it's kind of just an introductory part for the privacy and security, which was requested, Professor and Doctor. So as I mentioned before, it's in testing mode in the city, in the lab, but we will improve with security and privacy aspects to be compliant with our European regulation. And of course, if this is going to be an innovation towards Europe, can also be adapted towards other countries, other standards according to this research activity and innovation activity. Thank you very much, and I am open for questions if there is time for it.
All right. Thank you so much. I think one thing I want to add here that it's actually this model, helping to scale it up within the Europe, like earlier Saku asked the questions. It's really, they're coming forward and utilizing their technologies, the innovative technologies. I'm seeing it a lot of trend towards rescaling from these technologies. Okay, with that, thank you very much, Martin. Probably we'll open up for the time question.
Yeah, I think there was a meeting here in like 2 minutes, so maybe just like 1 or 2 questions. I think we're good.
Okay, all right, Martin. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Okay,
Have a good conference. Thank you.
thank you. Technology work.